Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
He raised his glass, smirking. You want to plan a memorial? For Mom. What, like a candle in your motel room next to your little duffel bag? The whole damn kitchen erupted in awkward laughter, not the kind that's loud or genuine, just polite enough to sting. His friends, his wife, even her dad, sitting stiff as ever on that high-end bar stool, nodding like it wasn't the cruelest thing I'd heard all year. My name's Catherine. I'm 37 years old. I live in Illinois, stationed at Scott Air Force Base. That night, I was standing in my brother Mark's over-decorated McMansion in Naples, Florida. Big, open floor plan, marble, everything. $10,000 fridge humming like it knew I didn't belong. I'd flown down hoping we could do something small for Mom. She passed away 4 months earlier, quietly, in her sleep, after a long fight with lung disease. She wanted to be cremated. No big funeral, no drama. Just a simple moment with the people she loved. Apparently, that was hilarious. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going, and where are you joining from? I'd barely gotten the words out. Hey, I thought maybe we could light a candle this weekend, maybe just sit and remember her for a bit. Before Mark grabbed the moment and twisted it like always. Oh, you mean on your government lunch break? Maybe you can get leave to supervise the catering. His guests laughed harder that time. I caught one woman glance at me with something like pity, but she didn't say a word. Then came the kicker. Catherine here's in the Air Force, he told them like it was trivia night. She's not a pilot or anything. What do you do again? Handle lost luggage in camo. I felt my ears go hot. My spine stiffened, but I didn't move. His wife, Tessa, giggled into her wine glass. She's probably got a nice little cubicle, she added like she was being helpful. I looked at their father, our father, Barrett. He didn't say a thing, just sipped his bourbon and stared past me like I was a painting he didn't care for. I didn't argue. What would have been the point? Explaining what I actually do would have made it worse. They didn't want the truth. They wanted their version of me, the family joke. I stood there long enough to feel the final nail get hammered in. Then I set my glass down, thanked Tessa for dinner, and walked out the front door without another word. That night, I sat alone in a Marriott room 2 miles away. I lit a candle by the bathroom mirror, placed Mom's photo beside it, and watched the flame flicker. That was the night I knew I'd lost more than just my mother. My family was gone too. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, still in jeans and my base t-shirt, and watched the candle burn down to a stub. The flame danced in the reflection of the photo frame. Mom's smile frozen in that last picture we took together. She wore that blue fleece jacket she loved, the one she insisted on keeping even when the zipper broke. I could still hear her voice in my head, steady and warm. Let them think what they want. You know who you are. I used to believe that was enough. Mark always thought I worked in some glorified TSA booth. The rest of the family followed his lead, because that's what they do. I remember when I first enlisted. 20 years old, quiet, stubborn, tired of being talked over at every family cookout. Mark rolled his eyes and told me I'd be back in 6 months, with debt and a desk job. Dad barely looked up from his golf magazine, but Mom stood in the doorway of my apartment with a duffel bag in each hand, crying and proud all at once. Go where they can't find you, she whispered. Go be something. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. She was the only one who didn't treat it like a phase. When I stopped calling home during deployments, she understood. When I missed Christmas 3 years in a row, she just mailed me letters with pressed flowers and stories about our old neighbor's cat. Never guilt, never questions. Just this unshakable belief that whatever I was doing, it mattered. She didn't need the details. She knew I couldn't give them. My family assumed I sat at a keyboard all day, maybe printing boarding passes or logging cargo into spreadsheets. They never saw the desert sun that baked through my uniform after 30 hours in a C-17, or the airstrips I helped clear with a shovel and a radio in countries I'm not allowed to name. They never asked, and I stopped offering. Every time I tried, it turned into a joke. Oh, Catherine's flying coach again, or careful, she might arrest your luggage. The lost luggage line wasn't new. Mark had been saying it for years, but that night in his kitchen, with everyone nodding along, it finally stuck like a label I'd never peel off. In their version of my life, I wasn't brave or capable. I was just the one who couldn't get married, couldn't settle down, couldn't be normal. I'd become the placeholder, someone to mock when the room got quiet. And the truth, I let them. I could have corrected them. I could have laid out my credentials, rattled off my rank, Told them I run mission logistics and operational response for rapid deployment wings. I could have described the time I landed on a dirt strip in the middle of nowhere to coordinate medevac for earthquake victims, or when I directed aircraft during an embassy evacuation in 90-degree heat, wearing a vest soaked in my own sweat. But I knew what would happen. Mark would smirk, Dad would frown, Tessa would sip wine and change the subject. They were too invested in their version of me. It made them feel better, stronger, smarter, more successful. My silence just made it easier. And now, Mom was gone. The only person who ever saw me, really saw me, was gone. Her belief in me had been this invisible rope I held on to every time the isolation got too loud. And now, all I had left was a picture and a cheap candle in a hotel bathroom. But belief doesn't burn out that easy. Mom didn't raise me to beg for understanding. She raised me to do the job, to keep going. And even though her voice had gone quiet, I could still feel the shape of her hand on my shoulder, still hear her laugh when I told her I outranked some guy who once called me sweetheart in a briefing. They could think what they wanted. They could keep their jokes, their dinners, their wine glasses. They didn't know me, but she did. And that was enough to stand back up. I was back at Scott 6 months later, standing in the command center with my eyes locked on a bank of screens while Hurricane Astra ripped the Caribbean apart in real time. Landfall confirmed. Isapura just took a direct hit. The words came from Lieutenant Romero at the station next to mine, but I'd already seen it. Satellite feeds showed the storm chewing through the island like it owed it money. Roads gone, palm trees snapped like toothpicks, the coastline drowning under 20 feet of storm surge. The resort Mark bragged about for years, gone, flattened. News feeds were already throwing around words like catastrophic and mass casualties. Somebody said a wedding party from LA was there. One congressman's niece, 2 CEOs, some minor celebrity. Nobody could reach the resort. No comms, no grid, no airstrip. Colonel Reed, my CO said, stepping up behind me. You're a Pathfinder. Mission is yours. I nodded once. No reaction. Just grabbed my tablet and got to work. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My job was simple on paper. Get there. Assess the airfield, or what was left of it. Build an emergency landing strip if possible. Clear enough debris to get in and get people out. The hard part. We didn't know if there even was an airfield anymore. And we didn't have time to sit around and guess. I locked in my loadout team, combat controllers, pararescue, engineers, and security forces, and pulled comms with the 301 St. Airlift Wing. We needed a tactical aircraft ready to roll by midnight. Let's assume zero infrastructure, I told them. Fuel's ours. Comms are ours. Power's ours. Anything you need, you're bringing with you. Pack like we're going camping on Mars. I don't remember anyone questioning me. When you've done this enough times, you learn to speak like you already know the answers. Confidence matters, even when you're 2 minutes from throwing up. By 0300, we had eyes on a potential drop zone, northwest quadrant of the island, close to a coastal highway that looked mostly intact. There was a stretch of asphalt long enough to risk a landing if we cleared the debris. Risky, but doable. Start your strip from that overpass, I told Sergeant Lang, one of my controllers. Give me 800 feet minimum and a dirt turnaround if we can't anchor the wheels. The rest of the team jumped into motion. Fuel calculations, load lists, evac priority tiers. The room buzzed with the kind of pressure I lived for. Nobody cared where I went to high school. Nobody asked about my brother. I was the tip of the spear, and they followed me without blinking. And then someone said the name out loud. Isa Pura, Romero repeated from his station. Isn't that where your brother opened that resort last year? I paused for half a second, then looked back at my screen. Guess we'll see what's left of it, I said. They didn't push. No one made a joke. I pulled up the personnel database, checking for embassy contacts and emergency air rights. Names were already coming in. Family members calling senators, senators calling generals, generals pinging our inboxes. I scanned the evacuation priority list. No sign of Mark. Not yet. Didn't matter. I had a mission. As the first glimmers of daylight crept across the map, I felt that familiar pressure settle behind my eyes. The weight of knowing that everything that happened next, every body evacuated, every child fed, every life saved or lost, was going to land on me. But I didn't flinch. I had a team of 27, 3 aircraft on standby, and an island full of wreckage waiting for a plan. I clicked my headset into place. Wheels up in 90. Pathfinder's rolling. The second I stepped onto the tarmac, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Tessa, 7:09 a.m. Hey! I heard Issa Pura got hit. Can you check if Mark's on any of the evac lists? Tessa, 7:10 a.m. Seriously, he was at the resort. My dad too. Tessa, 7:12 a.m. You probably have access to that, right? Can you just see if their names are on anything? A moment later, 3 cousins, 2 uncles, and someone I barely recognized from a Thanksgiving 20 years ago piled on. I heard you work with FEMA or the airport or something? You're military, right? Like Air Force computers? Can you check a database or whatever? Please, we're freaking out. I stood at the rear of the transport, rotor wash, blasting the back of my uniform, skimming my checklist with one hand while their panic screamed through my phone. They still had no clue what I actually did. No one asked if I was safe. No one wondered if I was deploying into the middle of a natural disaster. To them, I was still just behind some desk in a nameless building, maybe pushing papers or answering phones. I typed one message: I'm on mission. No access to individual names. Will update if needed. That was it. Cold, direct. No room for back and forth. Then I shoved my phone in the side pouch of my pack and moved on. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. The rest of the team was already loading gear into the aircraft: emergency shelters, comms kits, trauma packs, runway lighting. Sergeant Lang jogged over, holding a folded map. We've got maybe 4 hours of daylight left after touchdown, he said. You still want the airstrip on the highway curve? I nodded. It's the only option we've got. We land, we clear, we coordinate evac ops from the ground. Fast and tight. No delays. He hesitated. Ma'am, you good? Laser focused, I said. He nodded and ran back to finish the loadout. I wasn't going to waste time playing text counselor for a bunch of people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. While they were clutching their phones and air conditioning, I was flying into wreckage. They had no idea what triage looked like, no idea what it felt like to walk through mud and diesel fumes while trying to save people with one medic and a half-empty aid kit. I'd done that. I'd led teams through flood zones, conflict zones, and places where the air still reeked of death 3 days after the rain stopped. But sure, let's text the luggage girl and ask her to check a list. The mission was all that mattered now. People were dying out there. Families without shelter, kids without food, entire blocks missing from the map. I had aircraft inbound, a medical tent to build, and exactly 0 minutes to deal with clueless relatives who thought I was sitting in a chair reading emails. The aircraft doors slammed shut. I buckled in, headset on, eyes forward. Let them panic. I had lives to save. The C-130 dipped low over the water, and everything inside went dead quiet except for the rumble of the engines and the voice in my headset calling final approach. I leaned toward the window. Issa Pura looked gutted. The coastline was shredded. Hotels torn open like cardboard boxes, rooftops scattered like confetti, boats stacked in parking lots. Pools were filled with brown water and glass. Roads cut in and out like someone had taken bites out of the pavement. Visual on landing strip, Sergeant Lang called out, eyes locked on the highway below. It's rough, but it's holding. I gave a short nod. Take it. The bird dropped hard. I braced for impact. We hit pavement with a bounce and a scream of tires. The landing strip we'd carved from a stretch of coastal road held up, just barely. A few downed signs and chunks of debris slammed against the fuselage, but we stayed upright. When we rolled to a stop, the back ramp dropped, flooding us with heat and the smell of rot and ocean. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I was the first one off. Combat boots hit asphalt, wind hot and heavy against my face. The air was thick, salt, diesel, sewage. No power lines, no traffic. Just silence, broken by the hum of our aircraft and the scrape of gear hitting pavement behind me. The road curved downhill toward what used to be the resort zone. You couldn't tell where one building ended and the next began, just piles of twisted steel, snapped wood, and crushed concrete. Fan out! Secure perimeter! Comms up in 5, I ordered, my voice cutting through the static in my headset. No sightseeing, let's go. My team moved fast. Combat controllers started clearing more runway space with axes and shovels. Security forces fanned out along the perimeter, weapons up. Pararescue set up triage under a collapsed billboard, dragging out tarps and popping up IV lines before we even had tables. I climbed on the hood of a wrecked SUV, half buried in sand but solid enough, and pulled out my radio. "This is Pathfinder 1, I said. "Landing zone secure. First bird clear. Begin wave schedule. Priority, medevac, and water." The line crackled. "Copy that, Pathfinder." I watched them, my people, working like they'd trained for this their whole lives. Nobody waited to be told twice. Nobody slowed down. And nobody gave a damn about who owned the beachfront villas we were stepping over. Sergeant Lang pointed toward the far end of the strip. "We've got movement down by the tennis courts. Civilians." "How many?" "Hard to tell. Maybe 50. Could be more in the buildings. Get eyes on them. Set up a funnel here. I want tags, vitals, and evac priorities sorted before the next bird touches down." He nodded and ran. My boots were covered in mud, and the sun was cooking my back through my vest. But my head was clear. Every piece of this, every moving part, it made sense. The mission had no room for drama, no time for personal bullshit, just action and outcome. I heard the next aircraft before I saw it, low thunder over the horizon. "Inbound confirmed," a voice said in my ear. 5 minutes. I clicked the radio. "Pathfinder 1 copies. LZ secure. Bring them in." People think chaos feels like panic. They think it's screaming and confusion and heart attacks. It's not. Chaos is quiet, tight, focused. The kind of silence you only get when the stakes are too high to waste on noise. And that's where I thrived. Right there on the hood of a wrecked car, sweat dripping into my collar, radio in one hand and a half-demolished coastline in front of me. The second bird touched down and kicked up a storm of dust. My team moved in rhythm. Stretchers out, water packs tossed down, names shouted over radios like code. "Got a crush injury here." "Vitals dropping on the kid. Where's that line?" "Tag red, tag red." I hopped off the SUV hood and made my way toward the tennis courts, what was left of them anyway. Chain link fence twisted and half melted, court lines buried under mud and branches. Survivors were scattered across pool towels, doors, plywood, anything flat. Some sat upright, shaking and silent. Others moaned softly into the air. 2 kids cried near the net post, holding each other and a stuffed bear covered in grime. Pararescue was already working triage, splinting arms, checking pulses, radioing medevac priority. It smelled like mildew and blood. I didn't slow down. Captain Ellis met me halfway. His face was flushed, sleeves rolled up, gloves covered in dried something. "Ma'am," he said, stepping aside as a medic sprinted past. "We've got one guy asking for you by name." Said his daughter was military. Gave your full name. That made me stop. Name. "Barrett," he said, wiping his forehead with the back of his arm. "Older male, probably mid-60s, laceration to the leg, some dehydration, stable. He's got his son with him, real piece of work." My stomach dropped. "Describe him." "Loud, pushy, blonde. Yelling at one of my guys for not having a private evac chopper. Sound familiar?" It did. "Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from." I pulled my radio up. "Lang, I'm stepping into the triage zone. You've got air traffic until I'm back." "Copy." Ellis led me through the crowd. Bodies shifted. Voices blurred. The noise faded behind a slow, creeping hum in my ears. We stepped into the shaded corner of the clinic setup. 4 tarps, a generator, and 2 folding cots. That's when I saw him. My father. Barrett was lying back on one of the cots, a bloody bandage wrapped tight around his thigh. His skin looked paper thin. He was conscious, alert, face lined with sweat and sun. He looked old, older than 6 months ago, like something in him had cracked open and never sealed back up. Standing next to him, red-faced and pacing like a cornered dog, was Mark. He didn't see me yet. He was too busy pointing at a medic and barking orders. "I said priority evac." "My father is a U.S. citizen, for Christ's sake. Do you know what resort this is? Do you know who I am?" The medic ignored him. I didn't. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and walked forward. My boots scraped the pavement, loud enough that my father turned his head first. His eyes found mine, wide, blinking like he couldn't believe what he was looking at. Then Mark turned. His mouth opened, confused at first, then cocky, like he still thought he had the upper hand. "Catherine," he said, squinting. "What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Not yet, I just kept walking toward them like this was any other operation. Because to me, it was. Mark didn't shut up, not even when I stepped inside the clinic. He was circling the cot like a lawyer in a courtroom, hands flying, voice raised. A 20-something airman stood frozen in front of him, holding a clipboard and clearly rethinking every choice that led him here. "This is unacceptable," Mark snapped. "He needs to be on the next chopper out. Medical emergency. Look at his leg, for God's sake. What are you people even doing out here?" The kid flinched but didn't move. He looked exhausted, soaked in sweat. Probably hadn't eaten in 12 hours. I stepped beside him, just far enough into Mark's line of sight. He didn't register me, just gave a fast, dismissive glance at my uniform and snapped, "Can someone competent take over here?" Then his eyes caught the insignia on my chest, and everything stopped. His face twisted for a second, like his brain refused to believe what it was seeing. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, voice quieter this time. "Catherine." I didn't answer. Not right away. I looked at the airman. "You're good. Go help Ellis with evac tags." He gave me a grateful nod and practically vanished. Mark stared at me like I'd just walked out of a grave. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Still no answer. He blinked, tried to recover, his tone sliding back into that old familiar smirk. Wait, don't tell me. You followed some supply truck out here, sorting food boxes." I stood my ground, arms crossed, no expression. He kept reaching for the old scripts. Or what, someone needed a spreadsheet made. You still doing the, Pathfinder thing, or whatever. I didn't blink. He looked at my chest again, saw the rank, then glanced at my radio, my gear, the way the other airmen moved around me without hesitation. Something shifted. "Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from." His smirk cracked, just a hair. "You're not just tagging along." I still didn't speak. I wanted it to hit him in full. Let him look around and connect the dots. Let him realize no one here was treating me like an assistant or some sidekick. I watched him slowly deflate. He tried one more time. "Okay, seriously, what's your actual role here?" My eyes cut to the whiteboard near the entrance, handwritten assignments, flight schedules, and in thick black marker at the top, OPLEAD, COLONK, read/Pathfinder. Mark saw it. The color drained from his face. Barrett shifted on the cot, groaning softly. "Mark," he said, voice raspy. "What's going on?" Mark didn't answer him. He looked at me, finally seeing it, seeing me, but not knowing how to react. He stepped closer like he had something to say, maybe even an apology trying to form behind his lips. But I was already moving. I stepped past him, straight to the medic checking vitals on my father. "How's the leg?" I asked. The medic glanced up. "Torn through muscle. Stabilized, but he needs out within the hour or we risk infection. Evac him on the next bird," I said. "Tag him priority yellow. Make sure he's off this ground before sunset." "Copy." I turned, brushing past Mark again like he wasn't even there. His voice followed, thin and unsure. "Catherine, wait, can we just..." I didn't slow down. I didn't give him the opening. Let him sit in it. Let him feel what it's like to be the one nobody listens to. I stepped outside the tarp and into the heat again. The sun was lower now, sharp and angry through the haze. I clicked my radio and requested a flight time for Barrett's medevac. Behind me, I heard footsteps on the gravel. Fast, hesitant. "Catherine, wait," Mark called. I kept walking until I reached the aid supply crate. I popped the lid, grabbed 2 water bottles, and finally turned. He was standing 5 feet away, arms half raised like he was trying to explain something that hadn't happened yet. His shirt was stained with sweat, hair sticking to his forehead, designer loafers sunk in mud. "You're Pathfinder," he said, voice dry. I didn't respond. He looked past me, then down at the flight roster taped to the crate. My name sat at the top of it, bold and underlined. Then he looked around, at the airmen moving with purpose, the triage tags, the runway crews hauling equipment on stretchers like clockwork. The shift started in his eyes, that old smirk, gone, replaced by a slow, creeping panic he couldn't hide. "You're running this?" he asked. "Like, all of it?" "Yes." I said it flat, no pride, no warmth, just fact. "Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from." He blinked like the answer physically hit him. "Jesus," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't know. Of course he didn't. He never asked. He never wanted to know. I tossed a water bottle at his chest. He fumbled it but caught it. Looked down at the label like he'd never seen one in a foreign language before. You're in charge of evacuations. He said, supplies, flights, everything inside the wire, I replied. Comms, landing coordination, medevac. That includes you. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His voice dropped. I thought you handled, like, logistics or admin work. You did. His jaw worked, but he didn't speak. I watched him start to realize just how wrong he'd been. Not just today. For years. He looked toward the clinic tarp where our father was lying on that cot. He's gonna be okay, right? If he follows medical instructions and gets on the bird I assigned him to, yes. Mark nodded slowly. I could see the words fighting their way up, like he didn't know how to string a sentence together without sarcasm. I guess I didn't really see this coming. Yeah, I said. That's clear. He swallowed hard, looking down at the water again. We shouldn't have laughed at you. That night at the house, I guess we thought it was funny, but it wasn't. He flinched. I was grieving our mother, I said. I came to ask for 10 minutes of respect. You made a show of me instead. He raised both hands, palms out, like he wanted to wave that part away. I know, but if I had known you were doing this, would it have changed anything? I asked. Or would you have just found a different insult? He didn't answer, and there it was. The moment. Every bit of crap he'd ever piled on me, every joke, every sideways glance, it all landed right back in his lap, because now, suddenly, the joke was in charge. He looked smaller now. Not physically, just smaller. Like the center of gravity had shifted, and he couldn't find his footing. I didn't mean to. Stop, I cut in. You don't get to talk your way out of this one. He froze, staring. I have evac orders to finish and 2 more birds incoming, I said. Your place in line is set. You'll get out when you're cleared, same as everyone else. You're really not gonna... No, I said. I'm not. I turned and started walking, radio already back in my hand, scanning the perimeter for updates. Behind me, I heard nothing. No clever comeback, no smug chuckle, just silence. I cut across the busted pavement toward the evac queue, the heat still clinging to everything like a second skin. Over the comms, I heard confirmation. The next medbird was 10 minutes out, already descending with medical teams and fuel packs. Pathfinder 1 to triage 2, I said. Confirm Barrett Reed for loadout, priority yellow. First slot. Copy that, Colonel, came the reply. Securing him now. I saw Mark hovering near the clinic entrance, hands on his hips, watching me with that same stunned look like he still couldn't decide if this was real. Hey, Catherine, hold up, he called out, jogging a few steps. I didn't stop. You're just walking away. After all that. No answer. I'm trying here, he said. What else am I supposed to say? I lifted my radio. Lang, confirmed security escort to Bird Bravo 2 for medevac. Reed, Barrett. Civilian, 71. Mobility assisted. Lang didn't miss a beat. Already assigned, ma'am. I passed the staging zone and caught sight of my father being helped onto a stretcher, flanked by 2 medics. He looked pale but alert. His eyes scanned the area, landing on me for half a second. I gave him a nod. That was it. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Mark ran a little closer, still trying. What about me? He asked. Am I on that flight? You're on the manifest, I said, not even looking at him. That's it. I turned, just enough to look him dead in the eye. You're a survivor. Same as everyone else. You'll be processed in order, depending on space, condition, and priority. He looked like he didn't know whether to argue or cry. Are you serious right now? He asked. I'm your brother. I turned away again. Lang, make sure his intake gets processed before the next load. Keep him away from med priority, non-critical. Roger that. Mark stood there, helpless, as the uniformed airmen moved past him, focused, coordinated, fast. Not one of them hesitated when I gave a command. Not one questioned my authority. He was still standing in the same spot when I walked back to my command post, past the broken tennis court, past the wreckage of what used to be his kingdom. The whiteboard was covered in grease pencil updates. New survivors located, lat-long coordinates flagged, new evac queue started. I grabbed a marker and started adjusting the rotation myself. Birds kept coming, calls kept flying, the mission moved, and for once, his opinion didn't matter. The wind picked up as the last light drained out of the sky. I stood at the hood of that same busted SUV, headset on, eyes locked on the flight board. Inbound Alpha 3 cleared for final. LZ ready, wind holding steady, green light on touch. Copy, Pathfinder. 5 minutes out. I clicked off and scanned the line of evacuees moving toward the load zone. Slow steps, blank faces, civilians clinging to plastic bags and water bottles like they were worth something. I spotted them, Mark and my father. Barrett was strapped into a stretcher, tucked under a foil blanket, eyes half shut. Mark walked beside him, still wearing that lost look, like he'd walked into someone else's life and didn't know the way out. Neither of them looked back at me. Didn't matter. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. To me, they were just more names on a manifest. Heads to count, cargo to move. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the pull to explain anything. I didn't need their approval or recognition or some clumsy half apology over bad wine and polished floors. Their respect had been like lost luggage, something I spent years trying to track, claim, prove was mine. But somewhere along the way, I stopped looking. And standing there, in the ruins of everything they thought mattered, they finally saw me. Not because I made them, because I didn't have to. Another radio call came through. Bird Alpha 3 on deck. Next load ready. Affirmative, I said. Next wave moves in 90. I turned back to the board. Rotations to update. Manifest to check. Fuel to manage. The mission wasn't done just because they were on their way out. I wasn't here to fix them. I was here to run the operation, and that was enough. For narration/video,